Waldorf education nurtures the joy of learning, sense of discovery, exploration, through the way in which the material is brought into the classroom. Rather than presenting theories that have to be memorized and then examples given, the attempt is to provide experiences and let the children enjoy and relish what they're doing, let them live into the imagination, let them live into the experience, and then they come to the ideas and some of the theories themselves. So, for example, in a third grade main lesson block on house building, the children will have a chance to make teepees and igloos, and they will go out into the yard and construct buildings. They will go on field trips, and gradually over time they will start to compare the different dwelling places of different peoples around the world. And by doing that comparison, they come to ideas about how people live, and thereby also how they think and how they relate to one another. Another example coming out of the upper grade curriculum in a Waldorf school is something like the theorem of Pythagoras. In many schools, the children will be presented, in many public schools, children are presented with a theory, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then there are various ways to try and prove that. What I did in my classroom in the upper grades with the theorem of Pythagoras is we actually cut out little tiles. And we had a large right-angled triangle on the floor, and each tile was exactly 1 foot square. And so I had the children place those tiles at the edge of each side of the triangle. And they had some playing around with that, and in some cases things got mixed up and so on. And then I had them paint the tiles, so one set was yellow, one was red, one was blue. And then, by accident almost, one of the children said, "But it looks like the squares on the hypotenuse are there are many more squares there than there are on the other two sides." And somebody said, "Well, let's count them." And suddenly they came up with the discovery that the squares on the two smaller sides equal the squares on the longer side of the triangle. And at that point, then, I wrote the theorem on the board. So that's a process of discovery as opposed to theory and then trying to prove it.
Why did I learn to knit? Well, first of all, there are a lot of fine motor skills that are connected with knitting, right? So you have to learn how to move your fingers and the knitting needles, and guess what? You also have to learn how to count, right? So there's a rhythmic activity that's in it. So it's training the will. So you have to remember to count how many stitches there are so you go all the way across. And you're actually taking one thread. So it's also in your hands and in your body training on concentrated thought. Because what's knitting except taking one thread? Remember, it's a ball and one thread, right? You're knitting into this whole cloth. But if it's not working, you yank the thread out, the whole thing's gone, and you can start over again, right? So that is a picture of sustained thought. So they're getting in their bodies, they're embodying this capacity, which will, again, as an adult, say, well, how do I learn how to concentrate? Well, I have to learn I have to hold the rhythm, I have to hold these, and in your hands and in your body. So that's just the handwork side. So almost everything in the classroom is done because it has a sort of a deeper development component.
There have been studies that have shown that fine motor skills, children who play instruments, who knit, who do things with their fingers, it enhances flexibility in thinking.
To watch a little thing, a little infant, the child wakes up through sensory activity, yeah? The taste of milk, the smell of mother and father, the slow opening of the eyes to really see the world, yeah? So our curriculum is designed to meet the child where the child is. So you can get a child to do many things at age 2, 3, 4, intellectual things, reading, but we believe that we witness that the child is delighted in the world through the senses, yeah? That the child is woken up, and it also develops this rich brain capacity through artistic play and sensory engagement, yeah? So a child just doesn't stand by a mud puddle and look and say, "Oh my goodness, there's the mud, the water has mixed with the dirt and it makes mud," you know. The child goes first face down into the mud, yeah, and tastes it. And you know, there's the old adage of grandmothers that says a healthy child has to eat a pound of dirt to grow up properly, yeah. And we would protect the child from all these things, but in Waldorf schools we don't feed them dirt, don't get me wrong, but When you walk into a Waldorf nursery school or kindergarten, there's something baking in the oven that smells heavenly, and the room is full of color like this one is, soft colors, and the objects in the room are made out of wood, not plastic, so that the child has intelligent fingers, and so they can smell and know, oh, it's bread. Little nursery school children told me, "You're here on bread roll day." I came in and said, "Oh, it smells so good." And they're like, "It's bread roll day." And it's like, oh, it's so exciting. And the engagement comes from knowing the smells and knowing their physical capacity. Yeah. So we want the child to feel. We want the child to see and taste and smell and hear everything in the world, and it gives the child a kind of joy. If you watch little children eat something yummy, you put it in their mouth and their little fingers and toes go. They don't just experience it on their taste buds, they're experiencing it. They're sensory organs, little children. So it's kind of a violation to break through that and go to intellectual things.
The goal of Waldorf education is really to meet each child where they are and to give them a variety of experiences and academic and artistic experiences so that the learning becomes alive, so that if they are acting out a play or they're acting out a math problem, that learning is so alive to them that it lives inside of them, and that it's not a fact that they've memorized just for a test. The children learn so deeply that and this is why we say that Waldorf is a living education, that it never really leaves them. It's not just memorizing something so that they can pass a test or finish a subject, that it's all connected. And what they've been introduced to, for example, in the kindergarten, gardening in the dirt and planting seeds and watching them come up. Later on in botany, they'll learn why, and they've experienced. Waldorf is an experiential education, so that nothing is theory. They're really doing all of it.
I think including your senses in learning is the way that we remember. I think that's an area in education that we can be lacking in other approaches, because we are sensory beings. We have all these senses, and what a shame not to use them all in your learning. If you think back to your own childhood, the things that you probably remember the most are the things that you actually experienced yourself, and that joy of discovery, not only through hearing a story or figuring out a problem in your mind, but to actually manipulate things with your hands, to create out of yourself, to smell the smell of flowers and then write a poem about that smell and search for just the right words to describe that. I think by using all your senses and immersing the children in an experience, that is something they will carry with them all their lives.